In a moment, we will witness the story and sinking process of the Titanic. At the moment of impact, we will see it from inside the ship. We will look at the real images of the iceberg that sank the Titanic and the traces it left on the ship. Then, we will learn what those who fell into the water experienced through an experiment, and we will follow the truth. The sound you hear belonged to the distress call sent from the Titanic. With the help of telegraph, calls for help were being sent to other ships using Morse signals. The Titanic had slowly begun to sink. At the telegraph was a young man named Jack Phillips, 25 years old. He did not leave his station until the communication room was completely flooded. He acted heroically until the very last moment, but nothing he did made a difference. The Titanic would be found for the first time 73 years after it sank, and everything would begin with the discovery of the wreck. The mysterious story of the Titanic began many, many years ago. In 1912, 111 years ago from today. In large letters, the headline read, "The Titanic will begin her maiden voyage." An image of the ship and ticket prices were also published in the newspaper. The story of the Titanic was actually based on a challenge. The transatlantic passenger trade was highly profitable and innovative, with ship lines competing to carry wealthy travelers and immigrants. Especially two companies were in a race. The White Star Line Company wanted to respond to its rivals by building two ships that would break records while crossing the Atlantic Ocean. But instead of making fast ships, they chose another way. In 1908, the company formed almost an army of workers, most of them Irish. Their goal was to build a revolutionary passenger ship, the largest, most luxurious, and most comfortable ever designed. They said, "We may not be fast, but who would want to travel across the ocean while seasick?" That was their motto. Their goal was to dominate travel between Europe and America within 5 years. Eventually, the massive RMS Olympic was launched, the largest ship the world had ever seen, weighing 45,000 tons, with a capacity for 1,000 people. Soon after, the company would launch another ship that would attract even more attention, the RMS Titanic. About 14,000 people worked to build it, and 200,000 spectators gathered to see its launch. Those who witnessed it said it felt as if the ground itself was moving. For people living at that time, this was a gigantic ship. Even the anchors of the Titanic weighed 15 tons each. The interior was decorated with the most luxurious furniture and items. Some people thought that instead of spending money on luxury, they should have spent it on technology, because at that time, ships with 4 propellers and better maneuvering ability were already being built. However, the White Star Line did not want to stand out with technology. It wanted to stand out with grandeur. On April 10, 1912, the Titanic was preparing to set sail from England on her maiden voyage. Her destination was New York. Under the command of Captain Edward Smith, the ship departed from England at noon, first heading to the French port of Cherbourg, then to Queenstown, and finally across the ocean to New York. As the ship left port, operators were warned. There may be icebergs along the southern route. These were familiar warnings. In the Atlantic, such alerts were usually taken lightly. At 9:30 p.m., a ship ahead of the Titanic named Mesaba reported seeing large icebergs in its path. But although the warning was received by the telegraph operators Phillips and Harold Bride, it was not delivered to the captain. At that time, they were busy sending paid messages from first-class passengers to people waiting for them in New York, the fastest way of socializing at that time. The weather suddenly grew colder, as if the cold breath of death was nearby. The sea was flat and still, like glass. The Titanic had lookout posts known as the Crow's Nest, where 2 watchmen rotated every 2 hours. It was almost midnight. The ship was sailing south of Grand Banks. One of the lookouts saw something ahead. He couldn't tell what it was in the dark, but it was an iceberg. Frederick Fleet rang the warning bell 3 times and called the bridge. First Officer Murdoch ordered, "Hard to starboard!" a maneuver to turn the rudder sharply. Although the ship's speed was only about 40 kilometers per hour, its massive weight made stopping impossible. Just 37 seconds later, at 11:40 p.m., the ship struck the iceberg on its starboard side. The iceberg cut the ship like a razor. Many sections of the hull bent, rivets popped, and 5 compartments began filling with water. Captain Smith called for the ship's designer, Thomas Andrews, and asked for a damage report. When Andrews inspected the compartments, his worst fear had come true. 5 of them were flooding, at a rate of 400 tons of water per minute. The ship could